doesn't help to tell them how good their life is. Because for the most part, they know. Hello beautifuls, my name is Giselle, co-host of the Strong Sunflowers podcast and founder of the Create app. And today's video is all about how can we help a friend who is in despair. May is all about Mental Awareness Month. And as I was reading this book called How to Know a Person by David Brooks, 10 out of 10 recommend, I got into this chapter where he talked about how to help a friend in despair. And he brought up the story about one of his really good friends who suffered from mental health and depression and got into this place of despair in his life to the point that he didn't want to be here anymore. And from reading that chapter, I was like, this aligns so much of my own experience dealing with a friend or having a friend that suffers from depression or that has felt despair so heavy in their life that has led them to even think about not being in this world anymore. So I wanted to create a video that kind of summed up everything that I've learned throughout this process, as well as the number one thing that he talks about in the book. If that's something that you're interested in, make sure you subscribe and let's get started. Since this month, we've been learning a lot about mental health and also how to communicate our emotions. Atlas of the Heart is one of my favorite books by Brené Brown, and it's literally an atlas of human emotions based on research, helping us really put a name and pinpoint our emotions so we can communicate and express them more concrete. How to help a friend that is in despair. When I went to the book, An Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown describes that as places we go to when we're hurting. And despair and depression are separate. We can't really talk about despair without talking about hope and hopelessness. We need hope like we need air. To live without hope is to risk suffocating on hopelessness and despair. Risk being crushed by the belief that there is no way out of what's holding us back. No way to get what we desperately need. But hope is not what most think it is. It is not a warm, fuzzy emotion that fills us with a sense of possibility. Hope is a way of thinking, a cognitive process. We experience hope when, 1, we have the ability to set realistic goals. I know where I want to go. 2, we're able to figure out how to achieve those goals, including the ability to stay flexible and develop alternative pathways. I know how to get there. I'm persistent, and I can tolerate disappointment and try new paths again and again. And number 3, we have agency. We believe in ourselves. I can do this. The definition of despair, according to Atlas of the Heart, is despair is a sense of hopelessness about a person's entire life and future. When extreme hopelessness seeps into all the corners of our lives and combined with extreme sadness, we feel despair. Just reading that right now really touched me. Extreme sadness. Really thinking of how can us as human beings get to that point where we are so unhappy, so sad, so filled with hurt that we don't even want to be here anymore. At first, a lot of us approach the situation by reminding that person, your life is amazing. You know, you have a good job, you have a good family, a husband, a wife, children that love you, friends that love you, a great paying job, you have your health. You know, we start listing so many things that they should be grateful for, that they shouldn't feel that way, that we need them. And when we say all of those things, we're invalidating their feelings. Because you see, people that lives are perfect, they also go through emotions. We're human. They also feel misaligned in their lives. And I think one of the biggest lessons, if that is the biggest part of this video that I want you guys to see, is that does not help. It doesn't help to tell them how good their life is. Because for the most part, they know. They know that they have people that love them. They know that their children love them. They know that they have the career they've always wanted, making the money that they've always wanted. When we talked about shame and guilt in our emotional intelligence video, the difference between shame is I'm bad. And guilt is I'm doing something bad. People that are suffering from despair, they already feel both of those things. They already feel shame for having such a fucking good life and still being so sad. And they already feel guilty for even having these thoughts because they do love their family. And would that be selfish of them to do these things? They are already feeling those two emotions. So by us bringing it up to their attention that their life is good, that's not helping them. I think creating a safe space for people to be able to show you they're ugly, for people to be able to show you their deepest, darkest thoughts and not feel judged or ashamed or guilty for having those thoughts, helps us move so much more forward. Because sometimes, right, just by having a space where you can talk about it, where you feel safe to talk about it, can move the needle forward. Ooh. Here at Juice for Growth, we talk about authenticity all the time. And as I was creating content for May and mental health, I think you need to be what you preach, right? And one of the things that I make it a priority, if I see someone that is down, I make sure I create that safe space. I make sure that I take the time. And one of our guests at the restaurant that I work for, she hasn't been feeling like her best. And she just suffered a heart attack. And she just doesn't feel like, okay, why am I alive? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And it's one thing to be young and have so many opportunities in a future, but there's also another level, because it's not just the young people that suffer from despair to this level. The elderly also feel this way. So she came in and she was outside, and I noticed that she was just not in the right headspace. And I got out of work early and I sat with her and we talked for hours. And again, creating that safe space for her to say, yeah, sometimes I feel like I don't want to be here anymore. And no judgment, no questioning, just listening. And then we talked about her family and her life. She got married at 19 like me, and she brought so many things. Maybe she just needed someone to talk to say those things out loud, besides saying them to herself. And it really touched my heart. And she was like, you don't have to sit and talk to me, but you did. And it always reminds me of the scripture that says, I may not be my brother's keeper, but I am my brother's brother. One kindness can change someone's life, can change someone's day. Not only having sympathy, but having empathy for their pain, for what they're going through. And I personally have never felt so much despair that I didn't want to be in this world. But for the people that do, create that safe space for them. Because if I was in that situation, I would want someone to create a safe space for me. And the next day, she brought me this card. And she said, G, the time and listening you spent on me at our table talk meant the world to me. I am a different person. We moved the needle forward. You're the best. That is what one kindness can do. Moving the needle forward. And in this world that we feel like we're alone and we don't have community or people around us that care, or it's a dog eat dog out here, be the difference. And I know these conversations are tough. I know these are the conversations that most of us tend to avoid. But these are some of the most important conversations that we can ever have. In the book, How to Know a Person, he says, as public life has become more bitter, private life has become sadder. More and more, I found myself having conversation with people suffering from depression, with people who are struggling, with people in the midst of grief. I've learned how to accompany someone through each of these trials. Depression, struggle, suffering. There's often little that we can do to cure those who are afflicted, but there are ways we can make them feel deeply known. When we are trying to see a depressed person deeply and make them feel heard and understood, we are peering into a nightmarish Salvador Dali world, one that doesn't follow any of our logic, that doesn't make any sense, and that the depressed person will probably have difficulty describing to us. There is no easy way to get even partially into alternative reality. We can only try to persevere through a leap of faith, through an endless flexibility, and through a willingness to be humble before the fact that none of it makes any sense. And from my own experience, and from what I've learned in this book, from his experience, number one, don't jump into positive reframing. I know that that's where we want to go because we want to see life in a positive way. But sometimes when people are coming to you to tell you about their feelings, their emotions, where they are in the moment, we don't want to hear that there's other people suffering more than me. I think it's really important to validate and just allow them to take up space, for their feelings to be heard and not pushed to the side. And for me personally, when someone does come to me, I do ask, why do you feel that way? And sometimes they don't know, and that's okay. But allowing them a space where they're able to communicate safely, and whatever they tell me, no judgment. And that is the second tip that I have for you guys. Create a judgment-free zone. Create that safe space where they can come to you. And I don't care how blunt you have to be, because I feel like a lot of people that are going through emotional stress, myself included sometimes, we don't want to be a burden on the people that we love. So we keep it in, and we don't say anything. But if you're listening out there, and if you know me personally, and even if you don't know me personally, my DMs are always open. Making sure that we are letting these people in our lives know you are not a burden. You can call me at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I am here for you. It is so important for them to truly know that, feel that, because a lot of the times when people do open up, they already feel like a burden. And then through our actions, body language, and emotions, we make them feel like they are. So make sure that if you are down, I always say if you're down to do this, to have these hard conversations, these vulnerable conversations, be all in. If I say I'm here for you, I mean that. And number 3, making them feel seen. I see you. I see you in your pain. I see you in your struggle. I see you in your strength. Making room for the ugly. I don't just love you for what you can offer me. I love all of you. The good, the bad, the ugliest. In Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown says, true belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. I love you guys. Go out there and be kind. Be great. Support one another. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.